So this is just after 05:15 hours GMT in the morning of Tuesday, the 9th of March 2021. This is the front page of yesterday's Rupert Murdoch scum, and they are kind of pushing for worse attacks on Meghan to be done by Brenda. So they want Meghan and Harry to be sent to permanent exile. And today's scum, we have not had any access to the actual hard copy of the scum for the simple reason that the shops have not yet opened. And we shall be looking at the hard copies of the Fleet Street papers when the shops are open. But even before the shops are open and the hard copies are available, we have had a kind of look at the comparison between the racist scum as published from London Fleet Street and the version of the scum as published from Scotland. Because clearly, despite the fact that the scum is edited poisonously by DNA racists and anti-Scots, they still maintain the pretense that there is a version, the Scottish version, or the Scottish Sun, which is independent of the editorial line of the Fleet Street scum, which is not true. Tactfully, they are running a piece about the allegations against the racist monarchy in the Scottish version, and they're not running the same version in the Fleet Street version of the scum. So that shows the corruption and the duplicity, and the corruption automatically exposes the weakness of their position. It's not a strong position. When they're corrupt, they are weak. And this whole campaign of racist harassment against Meghan Markle, accompanied by the subsidiary and accompanying harassment of Harry as a punishment for marrying this black woman. This is now exposed as having been wrong because the reputation of Brenda and her entire royal family fantasy enterprise is now at risk, not because of the racists and Fleet Street accepting as truth the candid account given by Meghan in the interview as published so far, but because the business, literally the business as Napoleon Bonaparte called the shopkeepers, the business worldwide, or the business run under the banner of the British royal family, is exposed to serious kind of loss, because the reputation has been now exposed as being shallow. And the royal family, being a racist royal family, is not a good business model. So what is happening with the kind of coverage or cover-ups in the Fleet Street front pages as glimpse, just front pages, because as I said, the full pages are not available. So the front page of the Daily Mirror says that Harry and Meghan bombshell, and it says what I have just said before looking at this: worst royal crisis in 85 years. That's the Daily Mirror. And the Daily Poisonous Express, which is the Beaverbrook corrupt racist Daily Express title, corruptly kind of conjures up a kind of scenario where Brenda is said to be sad. Remember, Brenda has been used as the fronter of the racist attack propelled by Kate Middleton and fueled and engineered by her mother, Carol Middleton. Now they're painting this Brenda as so sad. It has come to this. And yesterday, only yesterday, these morons were boasting that Brenda wasn't going to even watch this program. How dare these morons abuse basic, obvious truth in that way? If she was so kind of arrogant and so confident a day earlier that she was letting out the claim that she wasn't going to even watch this, then how can she be sad? If it was so bad, I mean, so beneath her kind of standard that she wasn't going to even watch this interview, then how can this same interview, unwatchable, worthless interview has had some devastating, saddening impact on her? So the racist morons are being aided and abetted by Brenda, who is not learned the lesson. And that is what Andrew Morton, who was one of Diana's kind of first biographers, has said, that the royal family hasn't learned anything from the catastrophe of his mistreatment of Diana. And Morton says that Meghan Markle has been as mistreated as Diana was by the royal family, which means that the royal family, British royal family, is done, dead. It's a complete fantasy and a costly and embarrassing racist fantasy which must be scrapped. The Times echoes the Mirror. It says, palace in turmoil over Meghan's racism claims, which is absolutely correct, factually correct. And the Mail says, the toxic accusations, incendiary racism claims against their family. Palace left reeling, and Queen, aged 94, in emergency talks. After that stinging interview, what have they done? Asked the completely corrupt and stupid and ignorant and idiotic, lying, dishonest Daily Mail. They said that she wasn't going to watch this program. And now they're saying that she has been devastated and she's having emergency talks. How stupid are the morons in the royal family? How stupid. It's literally stupidity. And do you know what they're saying on the front page of the Daily Mail? 25 pages of unrivaled reports. Now, what are they reporting on 25 pages? For heaven's sake. If it was so bad that it was not worth watching by the Brenda, then what are they writing on 25 pages? Surely it's a nervous. And what the Daily Mirror has admitted is the worst crisis in 85 years, exactly. So they are done for. This credibility is done for. The pretense, this racist House of the Windsors must be scrapped. And then the Boris Graf says, this is the only one that has actually referred to Joe Biden. And Joe Biden says that Meghan has shown courage, which is exactly true. But she had no alternative. She had to go somewhere to seek redress from the emotional attacks on her for the 2 years that she has been there by these racists. So Biden has, and Boris Graf has actually acknowledged that headline. And the corrupt and the stupid Daily Star, London, because the Daily Star is the name of so many English language papers published from so many countries in Africa and Asia, that it has to be pointed out that this Daily Star, which we call the Daily Star as well, is the one that we are talking about coming from London. And as far as I'm concerned, in the campaign against the racist car, I had to mount a campaign in 1988, soon after this car was published, I think, or not long after it was published, because this car attacked a Bangladeshi family in Hitchin, which family was given council housing. 1988, remember, this is quite a bit ago. So that's 38, 39, 30, more than 30 years ago. And I went there solo with the banner slogan, racist Daily Star. And the campaign I formed around that time, not just immediately, but before that, 2 years earlier, against the king of the ghetto, the racist attack on the Bangladeshis in Brick Lane, as shown on BBC Two channel. So it was the campaign against racist media attacks on the Bangladeshis in the UK. Now that whole long name is easily kind of abbreviated into a self-expressing Bangladeshi word, which is kormobuk or karmabuk, kormobuk. Kormobuk means somebody who is doing positive things and who is disposed to do work and work positively. So that was the campaign which took the demands against racist Daily Stars, this car in 1988, to their office, which was still literally in Fleet Street. And it wasn't far from the St. Paul's Cathedral. And it was generally on the opposite side of the then office, still in Brick Lane, 85 Fleet Street, of the Reuters news agency and the Press Association, both of which have now moved and they've been separate for a number of years. So I campaigned for the end of racist attack or attacks by the Daily Star. And 2 years earlier, I organized the demonstration outside the BBC's headquarters based at White City in West London, far West London, against the King of the Ghetto racist series, which was shown on 4 consecutive Thursdays in May 1986. And this Daily Star is so bad and so dishonest and so brazenly contemptuous of Meghan and Harry that it is running the headline today saying our telly broke at 8:59 p.m. last night. Did we miss anything? That is a sarcastic, sick-making kind of denial of any importance or significance to this very thing that the entire paper is madly, kind of nervously hyperactive about. Because 8:59 p.m. was the time that the UK channel, ITV, was due to broadcast the interview at 9 p.m., 1 minute later. So they're saying that they didn't even know that there was anything. This is like Brenda saying that she won't watch it, or then having emergency talks after it was broadcast. And the I newspaper also echoes what the Daily Mirror and the Times headlines are saying. Palace, that is Buckingham Palace, is in crisis talks over racism allegation. This is the first time that Brenda, who has been racist all her decades in the so-called throne, is now facing this horrible truth. If she had stepped down a few years ago, she would not have been probed or investigated. But this one is not going to go away. She is investigated. It doesn't need any further detailed investigation. That statement by Meghan and its coverage in the papers, so-called in the media, has done the main kind of finding, if you like. And no matter how many thousands of times they make up another series of excuses and allegations against Meghan and Harry, this one is going to stick. And let's see if there is anything else there. Yes. And the Metro, which is the morning kind of version of a free giveaway thing, controlled, I think, still controlled by the Daily Mail group, has got the front page, just the four of us now, these meaning the Meghan and Harry and their child Archie, and their about to be born daughter. So this is just the four of us, and that is the picture. And the Financial Times has got a warning from the latest appointee in the post of Bank of England governor, Bailey, who is warning of fresh Bank of England fears over post-pandemic inflation. Now that is a lie, because Bailey is the liar, not Financial Times on this one. Bailey is the liar. Most of the Bank of England governors have been liars and creeps. Although it is glorified as the central government of the nation or whatever, the nation itself is misleading. And Bank of England actually defies the pretense that it's the United Kingdom. It's not called the Bank of the United Kingdom, it's called Bank of England. That shows the brazen stupidity on the part of the English-centric regime. And no opposition, including the Keir Starmer or any of the others, has had the sense to point this out ever. So the headline is wrong, and the headline is a kind of spin for Bailey the liar. And instead of calling it the inflation inevitably going to happen because of or as a result of the consequences of Brexit, he is hiding under COVID, and that is what they've been doing on every other aspect. They have created COVID as the cover to cover up the lies and failures and costs and losses and damages of Brexit. So we shall be talking more about that in due course. But that is the first kind of diagnostic reference to this particular set of lies. Bailey is a liar, and the Bank of England bureaucracy is a lying bureaucracy. Now, the Guardian is also, of course, running the same kind of line, that the Buckingham Palace is in crisis following devastating racism claim. Now, that is the first paper only paper that is using the phrase devastating racism claim. Now, we have been saying right from the beginning, not just beginning of this particular kind of devastating series of claims against Brenda's racist kind of Buckingham Palace, but we have said right from the beginning, that is right from the beginning of my kind of engagement in diagnosing the institutions decades ago, that all the institutions are racist, and the fact that they are racist, the fact that each one is racist is immediately proven by the instant denial. The BBC is racist, the BBC denies it. Parliament is racist, the Parliament denies it. The government is racist, the government denies it. Buckingham Palace is racist, the Buckingham Palace denies it. Fleet Street is absolutely racist, and Fleet Street denies it. One of the worst racist morons ever to feature as a Fleet Street kind of editor, and now a television kind of host, is called a moron himself, because Private Lie gives him the name Pierce Moron. Now, quite coincidentally, we call him Pierce Moron as well, not because we have seen someone else use that name moron, but we have our own evidential basis and foundation for calling this moron a moron. Now, one of the persons reacting in the last, let's say, 24 hours to the airing of the Oprah Winfrey interview, and also one that has been commenting on the ruling by the Supreme Court against Shamima Begum, is an African origin woman who is a licensed law trader and a commentator, etc., etc. But she's an African person. And she has correctly said that the reason why Shamima Begum was denied the justice or fair kind of hearing rights by the Supreme Court is because she is, quote, brown. And that Meghan Markle has correctly identified the Buckingham Palace and the royal family as racist. And Pierce, complete moron, said to this woman yesterday, that is Monday, that her comments about Buckingham Palace being racist was disgusting. Now, disgusting does not apply there. If somebody tells the truth, say for example, if somebody says that there are people being neglected in the care homes by the government and the system, and as a result, the people, disproportionate numbers of people are being killed by the pandemic. That is a fact. That is a fact. So to tell that is not disgusting at all, is it? So telling the public and the viewers, as Meghan did, that Buckingham Palace was racist and the royal family was racist, is not disgusting because it is not a made-up thing. It is based on the facts of what is happening, what has happened, what has been happening. So Pierce Moron, who is the only kind of careerist in the mainstream so-called media in Britain, who has openly been a kind of stooge, willing stooge, racist stooge, and shameless stooge of all the wrong people in the USA, for example, Donald Trump. I mean, he slavishly kind of peddles, or has peddled for years, this complete anti-Muslim racist criminal, Donald Trump. So Pierce Moron is even worse than Nigel Farage in that he has been singing the praise of Donald Trump for longer than Nigel Farage. And Pierce Moron is also the editor of the Daily Mirror who was sacked because he lied about some pictures of victims of the British occupation armies in Afghanistan and Iraq, whichever it was. That bit remains subject to verification. But essentially, Piers Morgan was caught having made up these connections and accused the British Army, particularly accused the British Army of cruelty and brutality on that occasion without any definitive, conclusive proof, and he didn't admit that he had done that. So all these things combined forced the executive in charge of the company that owned the Daily Mirror at the time to sack him instantly. He is the only such so-called editor, that is the post holder. The concept of editor does not carry any quality of ethics or morality because of the behavior of these persons. So when Morgan was sacked, he then staged a very kind of labored transition to find himself a new kind of platform or series of platforms, mainly in the USA, because of his lying record, he wasn't going to get anything really in Fleet Street after that. So he went to America and created a persona for himself, including then getting the chair, Larry King, the television chair that was occupied previously by Larry King. He got that. So in terms of the money and in terms of the prominence, he was getting quite kind of busy. And then he got a moral kind of pretense that he was against the gun lobby in the USA. And he was increasingly infatuated with the liar Donald Trump, and he was backing him, calling him a friend and all the rest of it. So Piers Morgan lost the credibility as the host of the successor slot, previously and for a very long time occupied by Larry King. But he lost credibility because he didn't have the substance, which is the point I'm making. Piers Morgan doesn't have the substance, moral substance. He doesn't have any morality either. And so what happened? He lost the Larry King spot, and he also lost the accompanying kind of marketing of himself. So he came back to the UK, and he has become a plague via the ITV's idiots giving him that spot on the GMB, Good Morning Britain kind of spot. And this Good Morning Britain spot, Piers Morgan abuses more. He abuses it more than he uses it for the correct purpose. And looking at the evidence, the archives of Piers Morgan as one of the two fronters, or that is to say, one of the pair of overhyped fronters. Susanna Reid is a shameless, disgraceful seller of her body image, which is how she got the job in the ITV. But more on that in due course, but not in this particular part. So Piers Morgan, the contents of his broadcasts via the GMB will show that almost 90% of the contents are promoting himself, advertising himself. And the conclusion is that most of it, the rest of the 10%, is empty. So all of Piers Morgan is empty of substance. There is no content, morality, ethics, and objectivity. Now this is the new century, let's say, without any formal kind of lumbering of any part of the world really with the British Empire and imperialism. And this should have been the kind of century where the sins of the empire and the racism should have been subjected to kind of apologies and compensations and apologies in real terms for the racist imperialists. Instead of that, Britain is now witnessing via the mainstream an increase in the rise in racism and hatred that was not kind of foreseeable, and that was not tenable, and that was not sustainable, that was not justifiable. And what this preponderance and position in the mainstream of the likes of Pierce Moron actually confirms and proves is that there is no real opposition in terms of the morality, in terms of the wrongness that is being done. Whether it's party political opposition or moral opposition, there is nothing of the sort going on, which is very bad for the many. And it is worse for the people from the subcontinent and from people from Africa and people from the Caribbean. Because there is no platform that actually, with dignity and kind of integrity, offers a rebuttal to and the rejection of racist narrative and racist denial. And the fact that this moron has been allowed to say that this woman's criticism of Brenda's racism was disgusting, unbelievable. And that unbelievable has been used also by the liar. And we shall be continuing on the theme of exposing the racists in Free Street and racists in the mainstream media. And we shall be doing that as and when necessary. So back to the campaign for justice for Shamima Begum. Now, this is the latest one, is that we have spotted a couple of things from the kind of mainstream and the internet. One is a piece on the blog called Justice Gap. And the Justice Gap piece has been written by somebody. Let me see the name, if I can find the name of this. And it's written by somebody called Nicholas Reed Langan. Nicholas is spelled in the usual way, Nicholas, and Reed is Reed, which is the same spelling as the spelling of the last night of this moron, the president of the Supreme Court, who read the ritualistic stupidity against Shamima Begum on the 26th of February 2021. Now, this Nicholas Reed Langan is spelled Langen. This idiot has written the headline is Two Sides of the Supreme Court. And his description of himself is that he's a lawyer and he went to the Oxford University law faculty and the rest of it. The contents of his stupid piece expose him as an idiot. He doesn't know the basic constitution. He doesn't know the basic legal structure and framework. So he may have gone to the Oxford University law faculty, but that must have been an empty faculty, which I have said it is. I have encountered many academic lawyers or law teachers or law professors, etc., etc. And without serious exception, I found them all lacking in knowledge and lacking in the actual information and insight about the law. I won't discuss the particular shallowness and stupidity of one of the law lecturers at what is now the University of Law. It was the College of Law when I had the empirical encounters with these crooks. And I can conclusively assert that there is no law faculty anywhere in the UK that has the proper kind of contents in the course curriculum. And the leaders, that is to say, those who actually control the main decision making at every level in the academic kind of operation, is racist and stupid and out of date. That is to say, it is not fit for purpose for a proper society. So this Nicholas Reed Langan says that he's comparing two Supreme Court things. One is the ruling in favor of the drivers in the Uber case. And the other is, of course, the appeal against the Court of Appeal decision that had given Shamima Begum the right to return to the UK to pursue her claims against the Home Office. And in the piece, the idiot doesn't even have a pretense reference to racism. And this whole thing is about racism. The denial of Shamima Begum's rights, all of it is about racism. Full stop. Well, racism aggravated by anti-Muslim hatred. So it's the racism, aggravated racism against a Muslim or a group of Muslim girls. So what I'm saying to anyone viewing this is this, that only because it's an item presented by a white person or something does not constitute even relevance, let alone quality. So our mind should be open to evidence, serious, rigorous evidence, and it should be free from subservience to white-skinned or white-colored kind of writers or commenters or presenters, simply because they are white. The contents of what they present must be the main thing. And the contents of the all-white Supreme Court morons, so-called unanimous ruling against Shamima Begum, must be the actual field, the actual subject that should be rigorously examined, and which we are doing. So that's the update on that one. The other one is, of course, the campaign for justice for Shamima Begum and the other girls against the duties betrayed by the Tar Hamlets, the local council, which is the geographical and thus demographic council responsible for delivering duties of care and safeguarding to these children, these girls. And a note about the definition of children in this context. These children are now, all of them, over 19 years of age. So they're not at the present time children in that sense. But our inquiry and our campaign is about the time when they were children and when they had the claim and the right to be safeguarded by the local council under the duties owed by the council to them under the safeguarding children duties, which we calculate began in October 2010 when Lutfur Rahman was foisted to be the corrupt mayor in the corrupt post to be elected mayor in October 2010. And we say that because when they were pictured, the three girls along with Shamima at allegedly or reportedly at Turkish airport during some time of their crossing into Syria through Turkey. So that must have happened. That was the time when they were about 15 years old. That must have happened as a culmination. We are saying a culmination of several years of kind of being targeted by these whoever forces, whatever the elements were or element was, that misguided these girls. And that process must have taken place during a few years. This is my observation. And I rely on the observation because of other things, various things that happened that I've observed as to the composition and the dynamics of anything, any project, any kind of that takes place in kind of brainwashing, targeting people. Now, about the time that whatever happened began, it was definitely during Lutfur Rahman's kind of incumbency in that corrupt post. So what we are saying is that these girls were betrayed by Lutfur Rahman and his cabal. And Lutfur Rahman is answerable for what details of the betrayal he did. He cannot be allowed to say he is no longer in post. That is nothing to do with his being in post now. It is to do with the fact of what he had the duty to do and did not do during the time when he was in post and during the years that these children were being treated or subjected to that targeted brainwashing and all the rest of it. It's fair observation, fair demand. And the claim that we are making against John Biggs is that what did he do, if he did do anything, after the day or the time or the week in February 2015, when these children were reported as having gone into Syria. When he became incumbent in the corrupt post of mayor, John Biggs became obliged to do the duty to these children. What did he do? And to the councillors, whoever was councillor or whoever were councillors at any stage during October 2010 and 26th of February 2021. In those years, or in the time that they were in post as elected councillors, what did they do? Because the fact that Shamima Begum has had various legal actions taken in her name or taken about her or against her, that has been in the mainstream news all the time. So it is not possible for any of these so-called councillors to claim ignorance of the fact that Shamima Begum was being featured in the mainstream news, both broadcast, both print and the radio. And she has been featured in the news periodically starting from February 2015. So 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 6 calendar years now in this cycle. The cycle of their being actually reported to have gone into Syria. So what did these councillors do? They haven't made any statement at all, none of them, about themselves in relation to the duty that the council, Tower Hamlets Council, owed to these children. They may make references, because all these references about the campaign, Shamima Begum, or the issues arising from the racist Supreme Court ruling against Shamima Begum on the 26th of February. These are references made as a result of our campaign, these particular ones about Armless Council, because of our campaign, which we have started in a revised, updated form. What did they do, these councillors? And as I have said, anyone viewing this program or this channel must not think that only because it's not called the BBC or the CBS or ABC or whatever, that its contents and its relevance and its kind of centrality is kind of less than centrality and the authority and the integrity of these contents and the relevance, less than any of those mainstream. It is not. The fact is that it is more relevant and more central and more original and more fresh, if you like, and more in-depth. So what we are saying to Tower Hamlets councillors and Tower Hamlets Council itself, in the sense of the permanent kind of staff employed by the council in the name of the council, delivering the so-called duties. What do they all do? The councillors, the council staff, and each of the mayors, what did they do? Because looking at the numbers of items that they pushed as propaganda, news releases and news events, including the ones that have been kind of promoted over the years, during the relevant years, by Ohid Ahmed, doing the walkabouts accompanied by police in Tower Hamlets. There is no evidence, there is no mention of Shamima Begum, there is no mention of the safeguarding duty owed to children by Tower Hamlets Council. Safeguarding in the content, actual central element here in reference to what Ohid Ahmed did and Ohid Ahmed should have done. As I said, after the murder by other Bangladeshis of the Bangladeshi child Ajmal Ahmad in 2013 in the vicinity of the Langdon Park School, which they all were connected to, I went to see Ohid Ahmed. Now, if he had the morality and the sense of duty and ethics, he would have replied to me properly in communications, but he didn't. And I knew that I was lowering myself in going to see him and asking questions, because there is nothing that Ohid Ahmed knows about society or politics, about democracy, etc., that I need anything to learn from him. Nothing. There is absolutely nothing. But I did go there for the simple reason of establishing the evidence, which I am now referring to repeatedly, that I did go there. That is to say, I did go to Ohid Ahmed, despite my knowledge that he was ignorant of his duties and he was contemptuous of his obligations to the electors. But I wanted to create the actual incident of going there, giving him the opportunity to tell me. First of all, he was very nervous and he was physically kind of agitated in order to have the kind of meeting finish as soon as possible. I noticed all of that. But in order to keep the focus firmly on the role of the council in relation to the crimes that had been committed against this boy, Ajmal Ahmad, I didn't open another discussion about anything else, including his nervous body language. I stayed as calm as possible. I mean, anyone who knows me personally would be astonished that I put myself up to go through that stupid process. Stupid it was, but it was also essential for the collection of evidence so that I cannot be accused of being biased against Wahid Ahmed. I was doing the duty that he should have been doing, upholding the safety of the community in the context of the council. So I asked him what he was doing with the police in terms of the behavior of gangs in the community that were doing things like murdering boys like Ajmal Ahmed. And by all standards, Ajmal Ahmed was a very kind of, if you like, dedicated student and was very well regarded. And his schoolwork and his exam performance, which were made public after his sad murder, and those showed that he was a higher achiever in terms of school performance and in terms of helping other fellow students and pupils. So why was a boy like that murdered by a group of boys with the same kind of background, Bangladeshi origin? And Wahid Ahmed said that he didn't want to get involved with the gangs, and he didn't have anything to tell me about what discussions he had with the police. About the police, I asked him. He said that they had regular meetings with the police, the Hrs Council, and I said, were they public? That is to say, would someone like me be allowed to attend the meeting? As far as I remember, and if this is something subject to factual checking, he said no. So I said, are the kind of proceedings of those meetings available for me or people in the public? Again, what his answer was is not memorable, so I have to check what he said exactly, and he's quite welcome to contact me with the actual evidence of what he said or what he thinks he said. Essentially, that meeting was an insulting experience for me because Wahid Ahmed showed no interest in the fact that the council was failing to safeguard the children, like the child Ajmal Ahmed. So that's a very kind of central example, contemporaneously kind of obtained by me as evidence about the role of Hrs Council in safeguarding children. And the contrast to that insulting series of very short statements by Wahid Ahmed to me on that occasion, he was quite happy to parade himself every so often, doing what he called the walkabouts, accompanied by numbers of police in tower hamlets and walking through one or two or three streets. Now, as I have said before, not in this particular edition, but I have said before, that is the stupidest thing to do. Because if you had kind of advertised or announced in advance of the event that you are going to go through any street or road accompanied by police, and as part of safeguarding or community safety kind of so-called activity by the council, then no criminal would be doing any crime that you can stop or you can watch or you can witness. But that's the implication. That was the implication of the corruptly organized walkabout. It never sold anything. It never caught any criminal. And it was not part of any accountability by Hrs Council to the community. And it did not amount to protecting children like Ajmal Ahmed. So that was happening 3 years into, because it was May, I think, when this boy was murdered. But That again can be fact checked, because I'm not reading the kind of records in front of me. All I'm doing is talking contextually from contextual kind of memory. Now, what that illustrated, quite apart from the negligence as shown to Ajmal Ahmad, was that other children who were in need of help by the Township Council under safeguarding children, but were not getting it, could be any number of children. And that was 3 years into Lutfur Rahman's appearance as the elected mayor incumbent since October 2010. And these children, Shamima Begum and two of our school friends, appeared in the news, as far as I know, for the first time over their crossing from Turkey into Syria in February 2015. Until that time, I had never heard of them, and I had no reason to hear of them because I had no duties to them in terms of personally monitoring them, and I had no facilities to monitor them or monitor anybody else. Everything I did and everything I'm doing and everything I do is voluntary. I have no duty to anyone to do the things that I do to defend them collectively or individually, and to analyze the context. There is no one who is doing it in the community, from the community, no one doing it from any of the academic institutions. Nobody is doing it from the council, and the list goes on. And the elected MPs were not doing anything. The two MPs at the time, one was Rushnar Ali and the other is Jim Fitzpatrick, they were not doing anything. And as far as I can see, but this again is a strictly fact-based, fact-checking note. Anything I've seen about Jim Fitzpatrick and Rushnar Ali means that they haven't done anything. They have not raised the question. I have raised many questions, dozens of them, but they have not raised even one question as far as I can see. If either of them, either Fitzpatrick and or Rushnar Ali, have access to facts and evidence that they've done something, and they can correct the facts if they think that the facts are in need of correction, they can communicate to me factually if the facts are there, but not to communicate with me otherwise. Essentially, Tower Hamlets Council at every stage that I know and I can testify has been a negligent council. So even if that council has had a list of duties in common with all the other councils, the fact that it has the list of duties does not mean that it does the duties. Note what I'm saying. So most of the duties that are listed as duties that are done by and the services provided by the local council, and if Tower Hamlets Council is one of the councils that have the listed duties, that does not mean that Tower Hamlets Council delivers the duties. And the worst example has been, of course, so far in the case of domestic criminality, the murder of Ajmal Ahmad. But in terms of criminality entailing international kind of implications, has been the failure and the negligence of the duties to these four girls. Shamima Begum had two friends, they traveled together. And the friend that had, according to reports now mentioned in other internet sources, that they went there, these three girls went to Syria or Kurdish. I mean, those kind of demarcations are complicated as well. So I'm not absolutely clear as to which particular geographical and kind of political territory they went to and went through. So it would be Kurdistan, it could be Syria, it could be Turkey. Wherever they went to, the main claim or the main claims for their going there include the reference to the fact that their friend who had gone to the same area a year earlier during 2014, that they went there to kind of retrieve that friend because they thought she was in danger. And they went there to save her from the danger. Remember what these girls were reportedly doing and thinking. They are being compassionate, they were being caring. And contrast this with the image that the websites are now putting her in, or describing this child and her friends as vicious terrorists. Now, if there are incidents that are evident or constitute evidence of their terrorism and vicious purpose, then by all means produce them. And by all means try these girls for any real crimes that they committed. So far, and this is now the 9th of March 2021, there has been no charge against any of the 4 girls that they committed any crime, either in the context of domestic crime or as definable by referring to anything international. That is wrong. So, going back to Tower Hamlets, the fact that these 3 girls went to get the 4th girl back to safety in Britain shows initiative on their part and concern on their part and care on their part for the safety, well-being of their friend. Tower Hamlets Council was obliged to safeguard that girl as well as these 3. So if Tower Hamlets Council was actively engaged in safeguarding activities for these girls, then it would have known of the 4th girl who had gone to that particular territory a year earlier. And even without these 3 girls later, a year later, the Tower Hamlets Council should have been aware of the danger that the first girl was in, and they would have stopped her going there. None of that happened. So, Tower Hamlets Council didn't do the duty. Plain as that. The duty that it was obliged to carry out to protect these girls, safeguard these children, and it didn't do that. So what was it doing? And what was the excuse? And which of the elected councillors is prepared to come out and justify, explain, and support Tower Hamlets Council for that? And which of the Tower Hamlets councillors is prepared to do the opposite? Demand, as we are demanding, full disclosure of all the evidence of their role, whatever they were doing, full apology and full compensation to be paid to all the children that have been victimized and have suffered life-changing losses and damages, and to safeguard the reputation of the community, because the community has been maligned totally without any foundation, without any fact, maligned for being the community from where these children have kind of attended the school, and in which community these children were born. So, if that is not clear, you can play the tape back and see what I've been saying. As to the evidence on the role of the media in demonizing or aiding the demonization of the likes of this child, Shamima, and her friends, let me start with the local East London idiotizer. The East London idiotizer is and has been kind of controlled by racists, anti-Muslims, and morons. Now, anyone noting that I'm using the term moron, maybe inappropriately, must know that I'm not. I'm using the term moron because there is no other word that expresses the conduct of these people I'm calling morons. The editor of the East London idiotizer now, which is mainly online and it's not sold at the cover price, it's a kind of title that they use to collect advertising revenue, whatever they can get. And it's a declining kind of local newspaper, as has been admitted by its owners, the Archant company, which has been asking visitors of its website and other local papers that the same company owns and those websites to donate money for that so-called title to continue, because they're loss-making and they can't kind of do the cost benefit in a positive way, and they're making losses every single time. Having said all of those technological management things and managerial and business model things, the current editor is a woman who is so stupid that she should not be permitted anywhere near anything that is called, even on a minimum kind of level, a journalist or journalist's place. This idiot lacks basic common sense, and nothing in the contents of the paper online that has appeared or published since she became the formal kind of editor of the East London Idiotizer and the Newham Recorder. Nothing in the title's website has even remotely referred to the council's duties under the Safeguarding Children duties. And any person with basic common sense would have expected this East London Idiotizer at least to run independent inquiries and reports based on the local events and situations. Since at least February 2015, when Shamima Begum and her friends were reportedly photographed in Turkey on their way to entering Syria. Nothing has appeared original, nothing has appeared of substance. And there is a betrayal, because one of the claims made by the East London Idiotizer and by the Archant that owns the title during the period when they were supported by the racist and the anti-Muslim Eric Pickles. Now, Pickles was imposed as the community secretary. The title has now been changed, or since has been changed, into the Secretary of State for Housing and so on. In other words, that post remains the post in the central government that is supposedly in charge of the behavior of the local councils. So when they actually colluded with Eric Pickles, they didn't they didn't actually tell the truth. They said that the in-house paper at that time, which is called in my language, East End Lies, because it was called East End Life. And I called it the East End Lies. So Pickles wanted the East End Lies to be scrapped or published less frequently, because he said that the local commercial paper, like the East London Idiotizer, were the correct newspapers which should be allowed support by the council, paying them money under advertising, etc., etc., and they could be publishing independent news items. And I wrote a number of comments online, which most of which the East London Idiotizer racistly deletes and doesn't have an online, and at least doesn't allow access online to the archive. But in those arguments, I said that it is absolutely laudable. I said words to the effect that it's supported and it's laudable to say that the local paper should be supported in order to tell the truth about the council. But the East London Idiotizer, I said, was not the local paper that would deliver their service. So I said it is true that the East End lies to the voters and electors and promotes too many propaganda for the incumbent mayor or whoever in the council. And I said there is no evidence that the East London Idiotizer will do any better for the community. And so on. So what I am saying here is that all those things that are directly my campaigns, so it's not like I'm picking some kind of headline from somebody else's work. I have been doing all the work in every respect about the role of the council, the role of the local papers in the context of safeguarding children. And nobody, not Eric Pickles, not the East London Idiotizer, nor any of them has been even mentioning the council's duties to safeguard children. And involuntarily, I was approached in July 2015 about the behavior of Claire Lillis at the Ian Mikado School for Special Needs Children. That was again an issue to do with the safeguarding the children duties that the Tower Hamlets Council owed. And the evidence of my communications with Tower Hamlets Council, including with Debbie Jones, who I mentioned yesterday, are available. And all the communications show my asking at that time detailed questions about what they were doing to safeguard the children at the Ian Mikado School against harm and damage that they were exposed to as likely to be caused by any kind of proximity with the convicted racist killer, Ian Devlin. Now, the short of it is that although he was likely or capable of causing damage to these children, even without that likelihood, he was wrong to be in that school employed at all. And the fact that he was employed by the school, and the fact that the governing body of the school had several members of the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets, as well as at least one member of Tower Hamlets Council involved, and that they didn't stop that employment of the convicted racist killer. That shows that not only has Tower Hamlets Council failed to do anything to safeguard Shamima Begum and her friends. The Tower Hamlets Council has been in brazen complicity with convicted killer and convicted racist killer. So this updating of the campaign for justice for Shamima Begum and others will continue.